Knew something was off when my mother served the roast beef on paper plates. Not because we were fancy people, hell. She used to say real China was for brittle women with no backbones, but because she only used those flimsy paper plates when she wanted to say something so nasty, so nuclear, that she didn't want to deal with dishes afterward. And this time, she doubled down with solo cups and plastic forks, red ones like blood, like warning signs, like, "Get ready, sweetheart, the air raid sirens are about to scream." She didn't say a word at first, just carved meat like she was skinning, a confession out of it. Her eyes never left the blade. My sister Sarah kept nervously adjusting the butter knife on her napkin like she was waiting for it to turn into a weapon or maybe a parachute. The house was quiet. Too quiet for Sunday. No sports channel in the background. No ticking from that awful rooster clock that used to sit in the kitchen. Just the soft scrape of polyester sleeves in my mother's breath. Sharp and rhythmic, like she was psyching herself up. I should have left right then. Instead, I passed the peas. Mom's hand stopped mid-slice. "So," she said, voice tight, "the will, no grace, no transition, just dropped it like a cinder block in the middle of the gravy boat." I glanced at Sarah, looked like she was bracing for a car crash in slow motion. "What about it?" I said, calm as I could. I didn't blink. Her smile was small and razor-thin. "I've made some decisions. Thought it was best we talk face-to-face. Like adults, cute. This is the same woman who once grounded me for saying crap during Monopoly." I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch. She hated that, not knowing what I was thinking. "You'll get nothing." Words dropped like teeth. Sarah gasped. I didn't move. Mom shoved a manila envelope across the table like she was dealing a dead man's hand. "I had the lawyer draft it yesterday. Everything goes to Sarah, the house, the savings, the retirement fund. I'm not leaving you a single cent, not a single cent." I didn't speak. I stared at the envelope. Her fingers were still touching the corner like she wanted to make sure I felt the weight of it. Her eyes were bright, victorious, like she'd won something. Like this was a punishment she'd been saving for. A rainy day. Sarah opened her mouth, maybe to object, maybe to ask why, but Mom raised one finger. That was the rule. One finger meant shut it, and Sarah still obeyed it, even now. I took a sip from my solo cup, lukewarm Pepsi, no ice. And then I smiled. A slow, cruel, knowing smile that made her twitch just slightly, like a shadow had passed over her face. "Don't expect a cent from me either," I said quietly. I set my fork down. The tines clinked against the plate. I stood up, slow and steady, while Mom's jaw twitched. Her smirk faltered just a hair. She wasn't used to me not begging, not groveling, not performing the hurt son act she was clearly fishing for. I didn't give her anything. As I turned toward the front door, I paused beside the bookshelf. Was mostly old encyclopedias and decorative. Crap from TJ Maxx. But I reached behind one of the dusty vases and pulled out what I'd hidden there years ago, my father's old black notebook, the one with the metal clasp, the one Mom never knew I had, her breath caught. Yeah, I saw that. I didn't say a word, just looked at her, really looked. And in that moment, I swear I saw something crack behind her eyes. I walked out the front door, without another word. 3 weeks later, everything in her world collapsed, and it started with what was written on page 3 of that notebook. But we'll get there. 3 weeks earlier, that notebook had been gathering dust in my closet, wedged between a broken flashlight and an old college hoodie that still smelled like defeat. I hadn't thought about it in years, not since the night my father handed it to. Me on the back porch by the glow of a dying bug zapper and the sound of him coughing his lungs out between swigs of Miller Lite. "If anything ever happens to me," he rasped, "and your mother starts playing Queen of the Ashes, you open this, but not before. Timing's everything, kid." I thought he was being dramatic. The man always had a flair for Shakespearean doom when he'd had a few. But now, as I sat in my car with the notebook in my lap, that black cover suddenly felt heavier, greasier, like it knew it had secrets stuck to its pages. And oh, it did. Inside were receipts, handwritten notes, names, dates, account numbers, even photos. My father's crooked printing, careful and furious all at once. He documented everything. And by everything, I mean a trail of lies that started in 1993 and ended with my mother forging his signature on a stack of financial papers 2 weeks before his first heart attack. I read it 3 times. I read it again, slower. She drained his emergency account, faked a loan, bought a second car for Sarah that never existed, and that was just the appetizer. By the time he got sick, he'd already started transferring money into a private account, only I knew about. Not because he didn't trust Sarah. He loved Sarah. But she was soft, too loyal, too easily manipulated. Me, on the other hand, I was always the ungrateful little bastard in Mom's eyes, one who'd never kissed the ring. Guess that paid off. The account was still active, still growing, and now I had the paper trail that showed everything my mother had done to him, how she gaslit him into changing the will once, then hid the second revision that gave me executor rights. How she buried the original will in a storage unit under her maiden name, thinking no one would ever look. I looked. And then I called Barry Kaplan, Dad's old accountant. Man had a handshake like a corpse. Jesus Christ, Barry said after I showed him the notebook. You realize what this is? I nodded. Leverage. He leaned forward, mouth dry. You could bury her with this. I didn't say anything, just looked down at the page labeled Contingency Plan B. 2 nights later, I visited the storage unit, Unit C17. Passcode. Dad's bowling score. Inside, exactly what I expected. Boxes labeled old decor and Sarah's summer clothes. But hidden behind a rusted metal cabinet taped in plastic was a fireproof envelope. Inside, the original will. Dated, signed, witnessed. My father's unmistakable scrawl all over it, and it named me a sole beneficiary. Every account, every asset, every goddamn dime. Now here's the thing about leverage. It only works if you wait for the right moment to snap the trap. I had the will, documents, the accounts, the lawyer, and I had a plan because I knew my mother. I knew she'd throw a party when she thought she'd won. Knew she'd start moving funds, cleaning house, consolidating everything before the probate review. She couldn't help herself. Control was her cocaine, and she was about to go on a bender, so I let her. And while she did, I made 2 calls. One to the county clerk, and one to my father's lawyer. His number had been scrawled on the back of that notebook, with one chilling instruction underlined twice. Only call if she burns it all down. Guess what, Dad? She lit the match. I waited until the morning of the probate hearing to pull the pin. You should have seen her strut into the courthouse lobby like she was on her way to accept a damn Emmy. She had on this stiff pastel blazer that looked like it had been starched in hell, and that smug tilt to her chin like royalty had arrived and the peasant's better beau. Sarah trailed behind her like a ghost, clutching her purse and avoiding eye contact with anyone who might ask her what the hell was going on. They hadn't seen me yet. I was seated in the far corner, black suit, quiet still, watching, holding a manila envelope of my own. When my mother did spot me, it was like a mosquito landed on her brain, annoying, irrelevant, but still buzzing. Gave me a half smile like she was pretending not to smell something rotten. Didn't think you'd show, she said as she approached. Bold of you considering. Considering what? I asked deadpan. She leaned in like she was about to whisper state secrets. That you're walking out of here with nothing. That I finally cut you loose. That's when I opened the envelope. Slowly, intentionally. The paper made a soft rustle. Her eyes flicked down. The will, the real one. It had 6 months before the fraudulent version she filed. Her eyes froze. The color drained from her lips like a faucet had been turned. She reached for it. I pulled it back. Try it, I said low. I dare you. She blinked twice. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Just air. Then the clerk called our case number. Inside the courtroom, it was quiet, sterile, like a waiting room in purgatory. Judge was an older guy with sunken cheeks and the exhausted vibe of someone who'd seen too many family implosions and didn't care for the show anymore. My mother cleared her throat. Your Honor, we're here to finalize the will of Edward T. Kessler. I've brought the signed and notarized copy. I let her have her 5 seconds of delusion. Then I stood. Actually, Your Honor, there's a discrepancy. I have a more recent version, signed, dated, backed by the testator's own notes and account transfers. I've also filed a motion to contest the documents submitted by Mrs. Kessler on the grounds of fraud. The word fraud echoed like a church bell in a morgue. Sarah gasped. The judge raised an eyebrow. Let me see both. As they examined the documents, I turned slightly and caught my mother's eye. Her hands were folded too tightly. Her left thumb was twitching. That only happened when she was losing. Leaned toward me and hissed, "How?" I smiled. Dad didn't trust you. Turns out he was right. That was when Sarah stood up. Her voice shook. Wait, you're saying the will Mom gave us wasn't real? Silence, cold and mean. And then for the first time in my adult life, I saw my mother falter. Actually falter. Her voice cracked. I had to protect what was left. He wasn't thinking clearly near the end. You know how he got. The judge's gavel came down. Mrs. Kessler, he said, his voice like gravel. You've submitted a contested will. Until this is resolved in probate court, all assets are frozen. Do not attempt to move funds, sell property, or alter holdings. Do you understand? She didn't answer. He leaned forward. Do you understand? Yes, she whispered. She walked out of that courtroom like a woman who just realized her skeletons were no longer in the closet. They were tap dancing in the front yard. But the best part, didn't know what else was coming, because I hadn't even opened the second envelope yet. The one labeled, in case she lies under oath. The envelope was slim, unassuming. White, with a little tear in the corner like it had been opened once, closed again and left to rot. My father's handwriting on the front, scrawled in all caps, looked like it had been written in a shaking rage, in case she lies under oath. I didn't open it in the courtroom. That wasn't the battlefield. No, it was too clean, too public, too merciful. I waited until the next day, when my mother hosted what can only be described as her victory brunch. That's right. After the hearing, after being accused of fraud in a court of law, this woman still invited half the neighborhood over for mimosas, an egg casserole like she just won an award for Best Actress in a grieving widow role. The audacity was Olympic level. And me? I was invited too. Oh, dear son, greeting on the card. Just a stock invitation slipped under my apartment door with my name misspelled and the start time underlined twice. So I showed up, not for the eggs, not for her smug little parade. I came with the envelope. The house was packed. Women in beige cardigans with too much perfume, men in golf polos who called their wives mother, everyone sipping lukewarm coffee and pretending they weren't just there to sniff around for inheritance gossip. Sarah was there too, posted near the hallway like a deer waiting for a landslide. She looked up at me with a flicker of hope, tiny, scared, and nearly dead. My mother saw me and smiled that mechanical, two-faced smile she'd been practicing since the 80s. Well, she cooed loud enough for the room to hear. He does show his face after all. I didn't answer. Just walked to the center of the room, pulled a chair out with a screech loud enough to make 3 people flinch, climbed up onto it. I'll be brief, I said, and then I held up the envelope. The room went silent like funeral level. Silent. You could hear the ice in someone's mimosa shift. This, I said, is from my father, dated 2 weeks before he died, sealed with a note in case she lies under oath. My mother stepped forward, voice trembling just enough to fool the audience. What are you doing? I'm unsealing it, I replied. Because you lied, under oath, about the will, about his accounts. And if you lied about that, I waved the envelope. God knows what's in here. She lunged, actually lunged in front of everyone. And that's when Sarah stepped between us. For the first time in her life, she raised her voice. Don't touch him. Mom froze mid-step, eyes wide. That never happened. I broke the seal, pulled out 3 folded pages, read the top one aloud. To whom it may concern if this is being read means, my wife has chosen to ignore my final instructions and lie to the court. Included are copies of 3 wire transfers she made in secret from our shared account to an offshore fund in the Cayman Islands under a false business name. Attached are the original bank statements and a notarized letter from my attorney confirming she knew. Gasps, murmurs. A woman dropped her croissant. I unfolded the second page. My mother's face had turned the color of old mayonnaise. This is a confession. A letter she wrote me after I confronted her. She admits to hiding funds, to manipulating Sarah, to coercing me into changing the will by threatening to tell people I'd lost my mind. You want to read it? It's in her handwriting. Signed. I handed it to the nearest neighbor, Mrs. Langford, her book club ally. The woman read the first line and sat down without blinking. My mother was trembling. She reached out. Please, you made your bed, I said. Now you get to choke on the comforter. I turned to Sarah. I'm filing for full control of the estate. If you want your share, we'll do it legally, transparently, and without her fingerprints on it. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes, but something stronger underneath. Something that looked a lot like backbone. Mom tried to speak, but the only sound that came out was a dry croak. I stepped down from the chair, left the envelope on the counter, and walked out. Behind me, silence. Then the sound of 30 years of reputation cracking in half. The fallout started before I even made it back to my car. As I shut the door, I saw it through the windshield. People filing out of the house like survivors from a collapsed carnival tent. No one said goodbye. No one hugged her. A few muttered awkward things to Sarah as they passed, but most just walked, stiff and quiet, like they were afraid they'd get caught in the blast radius if they lingered. Mom stood frozen in the doorway, clutching the edge of the frame like it might hold her. Up, her face, usually so taut, so perfectly managed, looked old. Not aged old, like something had cracked from the inside. For the first time in my life, she didn't look dangerous. She looked small, but I didn't feel bad, not even a little, because I knew what she'd do next. She always had a plan B, a counter move. That's how she operated. Everything was chess. She always thought she was 10 moves ahead, which is why I went 10 steps further. By Monday morning, the financial freeze had locked every account she touched. The offshore ones were flagged thanks to a quiet little call to a tax fraud specialist Barry Kaplan knew from his less than early years. The IRS didn't need a second invitation. Turns out they love it when you deliver fraud cases to them in alphabetical binders with color-coded Post-its. And came the trust audit. See, what she didn't know, and this part is just delicious, is that Dad had already predicted she'd try to rewrite the will, but instead of just updating it, he created a parallel trust with its own legal protections. It had a quiet clause buried deep in the language. If the executor mom was found to have committed fraud or intentional misrepresentation, the trust would shift control to the alternate trustee me. Guess who filed that clause? 2 days after the brunch. By Friday, I was legally in control of every major asset she thought she owned. The house, the accounts, the land, even the '93 Corvette she swore was sentimentally hers, but had actually been bought under a joint account. She lost it all. And here's best part, she didn't even know it yet. No, I waited. I waited until she called me, and she did. Saturday morning, 7:02 a.m. It finally got in the bank notices, the red flags, the bounced access. I answered on the second ring. You froze everything, she hissed, her voice barely human. "What the hell did you do?" I took a slow breath and said, "I followed Dad's instructions. You remember him, right? The man you siphoned dry while smiling through church potlucks. Don't. You dare! You already dared!" I snapped. "You dared when you lied to a court, when you forged a will, when you wrote him that letter, when you signed with a kiss while gutting his legacy like a deer on opening day." Dead silence. Then softer. "I just wanted to protect what he built. No, you wanted to own what he built. And now you don't even get to touch it." She sobbed once, just once, a short, ragged sound like a dying engine. "I raised you," she whispered. "No, you used me. You raised an image of me that you could scold and punish and humiliate until I became something you could control. Stopped 3 weeks ago." Click. I didn't give her a goodbye. She didn't deserve one. Later that afternoon, I met with Sarah. We sat in Dad's old workshop, dusty, cramped, still faintly smelling of motor oil and burnt coffee. I handed her a folder. "This is your share," I said. "Everything clean, everything traceable, no strings." She looked at it like it might bite her. "Is it? Is she going to be okay?" I stared at her for a moment. "I don't think Mom's version of okay exists anymore." Sarah nodded. She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just sat there, letting the silence wrap around us like the warmth Dad used to radiate when he'd tell stories in the same room, holding a wrench like a king held a scepter. Outside, the wind picked up, and somewhere in that silence, something ended. But something real began, too. It didn't take long for the vultures to circle. By Monday morning, 3 of Mom's closest friends, and I used that term like I'd use expired mayonnaise, had already ghosted her. One canceled their long-standing bridge night. Another texted Sarah, pretending they were traveling indefinitely, and Mrs. Langford, that beige banshee who used to gossip with her over boxed rice and dead husbands, actually returned a casserole dish with a sticky note that just said, "Please do not contact me." The empire had crumbled. The queen of plastic silverware stood in the ruins alone, but she wasn't done. See? Narcissists don't die quietly. They rebrand. And Mom did just that overnight. By Wednesday, her Facebook profile had transformed into something surreal. A filtered black and white portrait, a Bible verse in the header, and a long passive-aggressive post about being betrayed by those closest to her and finding peace in forgiveness and faith. It was her most liked post in months. The kicker. "You tagged me, full name. You may have broken the bank," she wrote, "but you'll never break my spirit." God watches. Oh, God was watching all right, probably through a telescope, eating popcorn. Sarah called me that night. "She's gone full Lifetime movie," she said. "Dry as sandpaper. I think she's trying to crowdsource sympathy." "She'll get it," I replied, "for about 5 minutes. Then someone will remember the Cayman Islands thing." That's when Sarah hesitated. "There's something else." Awaited she tried to get Dad's storage locker yesterday. I sat up straighter. "What?" "She showed up with bolt cutters. Said she lost the key. The facility manager called me since the account's in my name now. Said she was yelling about a box she left behind." I felt a cold knot twist in my stomach. Because here's the thing. I thought I'd found everything. The notebook, the will, the financial records. But I never combed through every box in that locker. Grabbed what I needed, what I recognized, and got out fast. So what the hell was she looking for? I drove there that night. The storage unit smelled like old receipts and stale air. My flashlight caught the dust motes spinning like tiny secrets. I opened box after box, Dad's trophies, some old coats, a crate of Christmas lights that hadn't worked since Bush Hussar was in office. And then I found it. Buried at the bottom of a crate labeled Xmas Fragile, apped in 3 layers of newspaper, was a small metal tin, the kind you'd keep cookies in. Inside, a cassette tape labeled 1987 Hotel Don't Destroy I froze. 1987. The year Dad disappeared for 2 weeks with no explanation. The year Sarah was born. I didn't even own a cassette player anymore. Had to drive to a pawn shop 2 towns over to find one that didn't smell like cat pee. When I finally played it, the audio crackled, warped, and low. But the voices were unmistakable. My dad, my mother, and a man I didn't recognize. "You said this would never trace back," my father growled. "And it won't," my mother snapped, "unless you screw it up. He's not going to ask questions. He's not even your clique." The tape stopped. The last few seconds had been chewed by time or sabotage. I couldn't tell. But I knew one thing. My family had another secret. And whatever it was, it started in 1987. At a hotel with a name I'd never heard and a man who wasn't supposed to exist. I barely slept. The tape looped in my head like a ghost chewing on a bad punchline. "He's not even your what, son? Brother? Heir?" I kept trying to plug words into the static and nothing fit right. And the way Mom said it, "He's not going to ask questions." That wasn't some offhand thing. That was strategy. That was intent. So I started digging. The hotel was easy to track, was only one in-state location matching the tape's handwriting and year. The Willoughby Arms, a roadside lodge an hour east, now a vape shop and a strip mall dentist's office. I drove there the next morning. The original building had been gutted and sold off, but after an hour sweet-talking the new manager, I got access to their old archives, boxes of yellowing check-in slips and Handerton invoices, half of them reeking of mildew and failed dreams, and, sure enough, it was. April 11th, 1987. Edward T. Kessler. 2 nights. Room 203. Next to it, a second name, Daniel Mercer. No address, no phone number, just that name. I said it out loud. It tasted wrong. I took a photo of the slip and left. Back. At home, I called Barry Kaplan. "You ever heard of a Daniel Mercer?" I asked. There was a pause, the kind of pause that tells you someone's choosing their words with tongs and gloves. "I have," he said finally. "Not in your context." "Why?" "He was at the Willoughby Arms with my dad in '87, with my mom. There's a tape. Something happened." Barry sighed, long and tired. "Look, I'm going to say something and you can't unhear it. Go on." In the late '80s, Edward made a series of panic withdrawals, big ones. I asked him why. He said, and I quote, "Because Linda's about to set fire to the family tree and I need something to put out the flames. Linda, my mother." I felt cold. Barry added that name, Daniel Mercer. "He's not just a ghost. He used to work for your dad, briefly. Low-level bookkeeper got fired for conflict of interest the same year Sarah was born." I didn't speak because a thought had slithered into my head. It was wild, awful, impossible. Or was it? I called Sarah. She picked up on the first ring. "Please, tell me you figured out what was on that tape. I'm working on it. But listen, I need you to do something. I mean this with love. Don't panic." There was a beat of silence. "Okay. Can you ask Mom if you were ever blood tested at birth? Any medical stuff Dad wasn't present for? Anything weird around your birth year?" Sarah hesitated. "She'll get suspicious." "Good. Let her sweat. Just ask." "She called me back 2 hours later." I asked, she said, voice thin. She got really defensive, like weirdly hostile. Said Dad was barely around that year, said she handled everything, that it wasn't his business. That was all I needed. I booked a DNA test kit that afternoon. Not for me, for Sarah, and for myself. Because deep down in the part of my brain I hadn't let speak until now, something was screaming. She's not your sister. She's not my anything. And if that was true, then everything I thought I was avenging was built on a lie. The results hit my inbox on a Thursday morning, 6:43 a.m. kind of hour, where the world's still quiet and pretending nothing's wrong. I stared at the subject line for a full minute before clicking. Your DNA results are in. I didn't even breathe as the page loaded. 0% shared DNA. No familial relationship found. It felt like someone reached down my throat and yanked out my lungs. Sarah wasn't my sister, not half. Not step, not anything. I sat back, numb, watching the cursor blink like it was daring me to scream. All those Christmases, all those hospital visits, all those nights spent talking each other off cliffs we never told anyone about. They were real to me. They were my family. But to my mother, just another tool. Just another lie. I called Sarah. She didn't pick up. Probably asleep. Or maybe she knew. Maybe part of her always knew. So I did what I do best when the ground falls out beneath me. I drove straight to Mom's. I didn't knock. I walked in through the garage like I used to when I was a teenager, sneaking in past curfew. She was in the kitchen, standing at the sink with the faucet running full blast like she thought it could drown out her conscience. When she saw me, she didn't even flinch. "You look tired," she said, as if nothing had happened. I dropped the envelope on the counter. She didn't touch it. She just stared at it like it had teeth. "Open it," I said. She didn't move. I opened it for her, slid the papers out and read the results out loud, each word cutting deeper than the last. And when I finished, she said nothing, not even denial. No tears, no theatrics, just a flat mechanical shrug. "I did what I had to do," she said. That's when it hit me. She wasn't ashamed, not even a little. She'd buried her guilt so deep it had turned into granite. "You lied to me." To her. Our whole lives fabricated. For what? She finally turned. "Your father wasn't strong enough to handle the truth. Neither were you." "Say it," I growled. "Say the truth. Say he wasn't her father." She narrowed her eyes. Edward knew, but he loved her anyway. And I let him, because that's what being strong looks like. That's what being a coward looks like, I snapped. I walked to the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me. I turned to face her one last time. "You remember the trust?" I said. "It's active, and the new terms, you're off. Get nothing, not a single cent." She paled. "You wouldn't, I already did, and..." Then I hit her with the same line she once snarled at me years ago, when she thought I was nothing but a broken pawn she could toss aside. "Don't expect a cent from me either." I left the house as the sun rose behind me, slow and gold and unapologetic. 3. Weeks ago, she slammed her hand on the will and tried to erase me. Now, she's alone in a house she doesn't own, abandoned by the daughter who's not really mine, stripped of every dollar, every secret, every scrap of control she spent decades hoarding. And me, I'm free not just of her, of the whole damn lie. Sarah. And I met 2 days later, sat in silence for a while. Then she spoke. "So now what?" I looked at her, my not sister, but still the closest person I'll ever call family, and I said, "We start over, without her, without the lies, just the truth." Finally, she nodded, and for the first time in either of our lives, we smiled without guilt.